Hello, all computer studies students at Oxford Spires in particular. This is a quick video to try and explain something that causes beginner programmers, particularly in Python, a great deal of trouble. Simply because of the way Python does this particular aspect of its coding. And hopefully at the end of this little video tutorial you should understand how to correctly deal with indenting to get your scopes in your Python programs working correctly. Now on the screen at the moment you can see I am in Thonny, but I've quickly pulled in which won't run by the way, a bit of code from two other languages that people have used from time to time, two other coding languages. This one is an example from C or C++. If I was to do it in a much older language called Pascal, which is kind of the successor to Algol, which is what a lot of pseudocode languages are based upon. The same bit of code would look a bit like this. And we'll talk about these two very briefly so you can see what it is that we're trying to get you to see and understand. Right, all the programs we talk about today are going to be exactly the same. They're going to do exactly the same thing. And we'll start by talking about the C program, and then we'll turn that and write a pseudocode and see how do we actually deal with this in Python. Right, so the first thing our program will do is we're going to initialize and declare a variable x, which will be an integer. I think I'm probably missing an int here for C. So x is an integer, and it is going to be initialized and start up with the value of 0. And then we have a while loop, which will simply print out for as long as x is less than 10. It'll keep printing out the value of x, and this over here is the same as going x equals x plus 1. It's, C has got a couple of shortcut notations. Notice we are incrementing the value of x. Alright, let's have a quick look now at the Pascal code for the same thing. We can see our program starts. The variable is actually declared in a var section, and there's x and colon, it's of type integer. And you'll notice Pascal is very heavy on its semicolons. Every statement or instruction in Pascal must be ended with a semicolon. So the program name is ended with a semicolon. And this is the main program over here. I know it's the main program because it's the begin and end with a full stop at the end of the program. And everything in here is inside the program body. So this program initializes x to 0 and while x is less than 10. And you'll know, you can see we have a do, begin, and end. So the while loop has a begin and end. This thing in curly brackets or in bracket star is how Pascal does its comments. Alright, now you'll notice one thing that is quite clear and easy to follow about these two other languages that Python doesn't, which do things that most coding languages do, but that Python does not. When it comes to complex statements, you can see very clearly what C does. C assumes that, well, every complex statement you've got to place within inside a curly bracket. And you can see I can highlight that, and I can see, alright, everything between that curly brace and that curly brace there is inside the main program body. Everything between that curly brace and that curly brace is inside the while loop. Pascal, there's my main begin, there's my main end, and everything that is inside the main program body between the main begin and end will be inside the main program body. Let's talk about the while loop. Do begin, there's my begin instruction, there's the end instruction for the while loop. I can't really tie them up, but what is normally done in a language like Pascal is you tend to line things up. So the ends have to be lined up with the statement, and we tend to use indenting C also uses indenting, but it's not as important, I suppose. In contrast, however, Python doesn't use any of these block scoping or complex instruction markers. It doesn't use begins and ends. It doesn't use open and closing curly brackets, so you can see nicely where things fit in. Python instead uses indenting to do that job, and it's all very well when you only have one level of complex statement, but when we get to have complex statements within complex statements within complex statements, then the whole process of indenting can become very confusing. Not to mention, yeah, you can get quite lost on it, to say the least. Right, before we get to the actual Python, we're going to write up the pseudocode for the little program we've just talked about. And so using the pseudocode notation we're using for OCR, you could write it like that. I prefer to actually do this in 2 steps, even though it's a bit more long-winded. Alright, so x is clearly an integer, and we have given x the value of 0. So we can now begin our main program, which is simply going to be while x is less than 10, and you don't have to, but I like putting a do in there, and then the pseudocode wants us to put an end while in there, and then we tend to like to indent things. And you can see that this is very similar from the actual Pascal language. The only thing that's been dropped off it is a couple of unnecessary begins, and instead of having an end for everything, we have very specific ends. We have an end while clause that we need for the pseudocode. Alright, so what's this going to do? We have to print out the value of x just like we did before, and then we're going to make x equal to x plus 1. We're going to increment the value of x, and that there's our pseudocode. Okay, I haven't put this inside a main program block. I probably should, because moving forward, certainly in the new spec, that is the expectations, that all programs actually are put inside a main program block. So we could do that by the comment, and we're going to say main program. There we go. Or we could be even a bit more explicit than that. We could go procedure main, and just tab everything over. I'm tabbing it over, I'm indenting it with a couple of spaces just to make sure it fits, and then end procedure. That's how I would end a procedure in pseudocode, and then my main program over here would actually have to call main. So this would be the correct way moving forward to actually write pseudocode programs. So that would be the correct pseudocode in OCR notation for that C++ program and that Pascal program over there. Right, I'm just highlighting this pseudocode version, and I'm going to paste it into my what will become my Python version, and I'm going to highlight everything here because I want to indent it all. So in Thonny, easy way to do that, I can go edit. I want to comment it all out. So in Thonny I can go edit, and I can go comment out, but Python also gives me the option to actually do something quite fabulous. I can use a docstring. So if I go triple quote and end triple quote, that now has placed everything inside here into basically a document string, which is also treated as a comment. Right, so let's begin. Let's initialize our we begin by creating our main function, so our main procedure. So in Python we go def. Well, let's do the body first, and we can, because right, so let's write this code initially as if we didn't have to have a main procedure. So the way we do that is we go x equals 0. We then have our while loop. So I can type while. I like using the brackets. And then the important thing in Python is that your while statement or any of these complex instructions needs to end with a colon. Now, the minute I press enter on the colon, Python is automatically going to, the editor is going to automatically indent it for me, because that's where Python expects the instructions that are nested inside the while loop to go. They need to be indented underneath that while. So this indenting is taking the place of the begin and end bracket pairs that Pascal uses, or that the curly bracket that C++ or Java for that matter uses. Right, so all my instructions that I want to do that inside this while loop must be at this level here. Exactly where. How do I find it out? I go to the end of the while statement after the colon, I press enter, and it puts the cursor exactly where the main body of the while loop is going to be. So, and what we want to do, very simply, we're going to print out the value of x as before, and we're then going to increment the value of x. So x will become x plus 1. And that's all that Python will need to do. So I can save my program, and I can run it, and it should, as predicted, do exactly what I expect to do. Print out all the values 0 to 9, each one on a different line. Okay, that's all very well and easy enough to deal with when you only have simple instructions, but we're now getting to the point where we have to actually have complex structures within complex instructions within other instructions, and so we need multiple indenting. So one way of dealing with it is to do what I've just done, which is basically write everything as a main program block, test it, get it working, and now highlight everything and tab it over. That will now tab everything over there. Python will, if you run the program at this point, it's going to say indent error, and that is because there's not something at a high enough level. Python recognizes that we've indented the code. It's expecting there to be another scope, another block to control it, and there isn't one. So that is why you will sometimes get that error. Okay, in this case, we are going to define ourselves a main procedure, and if I press enter, you can see after the colon, you can see it's lined up all that instructs all those codes exactly where I want it to. And you'll then notice as well that actually we have two levels of indenting for this while loop. Why? Because the first level of indenting is for the procedure main, and the second level of indenting is for the while loop. Takes on exactly the same meaning as here. So that outer loop for the main in C, or the outer begin and end for Pascal, is this first level indenting here for the procedure defined as main. And within that we have the nested indenting. Alright, so in the case of Pascal, we have a begin and end block inside the main procedure, the main program. That there is a block of code on its own, and then C or Java, that there, between those two curly brackets, is a block of code on its own. This is exactly what the secondary indent does in Python. It's not difficult to do. You need to understand how it works in order for it to be not confusing. And the best way to understand how it works, I think, is by looking at examples of other languages where this is actually very, very clearly laid out. Because these languages use explicit beginning and block quotes, whereas Python doesn't. It uses indenting. If I type something up at this level, okay, ask yourself, where am I? Am I inside the while loop or am I outside of the while loop? The answer is that we are at the same level as the while loop, therefore we are outside it. To be inside the while loop, I have to be indented. And every time you hit a colon, that basically should create in your mind, there's a level of indent, there's a level of indent. It takes a little bit of getting used to over time, but with a bit of practice, it's not that difficult to understand. The last thing I need to do to make this actually work now is I need to call my main program. Notice I put so I'm calling the procedure main, and I'm putting that call up against the left hand margin. If I now run it, my program works as expected. Thanks for watching. Mr. Holmes signing out. I hope this helped explain how to get on top of your indenting in Python coding. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.